Can you guys hear me in the room?
I can.
Perfect. So I'm not.
Now I can't hear you.
I stopped talking.
Oh, okay.
And welcome to the Harris Hall, and welcome to the September 27th afternoon session of the Board of County Commissioners regular meeting. We have a good schedule today, and I'm going to go through a couple of quick things before we get into our regular agenda. I'll mention the first agenda item is, as you all realize, let's see. The second reading and public hearing on Ordinance 22-07. We're going to have a public hearing. First, we'll have a staff presentation, followed by questions from the board, if any, and then we'll step into the public hearing. Anybody who testified this morning, I admonish that we may not accept testimony for a second time today. Forget that. If you're here for the second time, that's fine. You can go ahead and talk. There's no problem with that. Now, typically we allow for 3 minutes. And as of right now, I think I'm going to go ahead and go with 3 minutes. We have a pretty good sign-up sheet. It's going to take, but not everybody in the room is signed up. I can tell that by the number of people signed here. And Ms. Jones, can you tell me, do we have anyone signed up online?
Chair Farr, we currently have 16 people online.
Okay, then I'm going to use the chair's discretion, and with apologies, I'm going to reduce the speaking time from 3 minutes to 2 minutes today. You'll have 2 minutes to provide testimony today. Okay. Then with that, Mr. Mokraiski, I'll turn it over to you for a staff presentation. First, I'll give the preamble. It's a second reading and public hearing on Ordinance 22-07 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 4 to increase Lane County transient lodging tax and car rental tax in support of tourism-related facilities in Lane County. Now, I understand we have a bit of a Scribner's error. Lauren Blythe, did I get that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you. So, Mr. Mokraiski, I'll turn it over to you to introduce staff and make a staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to the commissioners and to everyone joining us here today. We have a brief staff presentation We know we have a number of folks that are here in Harris Hall and visiting us virtually that would like to make public comment under the public hearing. And so we'll get through our presentation as quickly as possible. You can open the public hearing and take testimony, and then we'll answer any questions that you may have. So I'm going to turn it over to Lauren Blythe, our interim Director of Operations, who will walk through a brief presentation. And Christine Moody, our Budget and Financial Planning Manager, is here with us as well. Lauren.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. As indicated, we're here for a second reading and public hearing for amending Lane Code Chapter 4 to increase Lane County TLT transient lodging tax and car rental tax CRT 2 percentage points each in support of tourism related facilities in Lane County. Just a quick recap, back on August 23rd, staff brought to the board some analysis from Travel Lane County that showed those amounts are viable and would put us in alignment with other similar areas in the greater Western region. If passed, the ordinance would be effective January 1st of 2023. Want to note that any funding generated from this proposed ordinance, should it pass, is not specified or has not been intended for a specific project. An appropriation of any funds would be determined by the board in a separate process at a future board meeting. To Chair Farr's note about the Scrivener's error, we discovered late yesterday that not the ordinance, but the attachment to the packet as written contains an incorrect reference. I believe Lane Code Section 4.005110 referenced Section 175G, and it should have been Section 175H. We consulted with County Counsel on that and concluded it is in fact a Scrivener's error. With that, back over to Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Blythe.
Thank you, Chair. That's well, if you have questions on what's been presented, obviously you had a first reading. We've had several discussions about this issue. So if you have questions, we're happy to answer those now. Otherwise, you can open the public hearing and take testimony.
That sounds good, Ms. Mokrajski. And I don't see any questions other than I have one that came from the Mental Health Advisory Committee, which pays close attention to our proceedings, particularly as it relates to people who are suffering from behavioral health issues, and some of whom are suffering from homelessness as well. The question that I'll ask later, I'll telegraph this, is how does this affect, if we were to increase, if this ordinance were to pass, how does it affect the rooms that are rented to nonprofits in our community for homeless people to stay in the winters? So that question will come later. Just telegraph that right now. So with that, we'll move into the public hearing with no objection from the board. Once again, I'll remind you that I've reduced it from 3 to 2 minutes. I apologize for that. You can give me some written testimony if you wish. There's no public record regarding this, so it is simply an ordinance that we're receiving testimony on. I'll call your names in order, and we will first, apologies to those online, we'll first accept testimony from people in Harris Hall live, and then we'll take the testimony from people online, after which I'll ask again in Harris Hall if anyone else who has not testified wishes to testify. There'll be 2 minutes per person. The clock will be on the wall up there, and keep an eye on it yourself. There's no warning when it gets to 30 seconds. Just keep an eye on it. And please, in order to get through everybody who wishes to testify today, be as close to the 2 minutes as you possibly can. And reduction in time is always your discretion. So a couple of just items regarding large meetings such as this in Harris Hall, which we do. Brad had it for a couple of years, but we have a few rules of conduct. I don't think that's going to be an issue today. We're all friends here. We all want what's right for our community. We all want the good stuff, but some of us disagree on how we do it. You know, that's natural, that's normal. And sometimes vocal displays are, you're tempted to do it. I'm going to ask you to not do it today. While people are talking, allow them to talk freely in order to reduce the possibility of intimidation. The same thing with signs. I see a few people do have signs. I love them. I like the signs, sports for all seasons, various things, but please don't wave them during or any time during the public testimony today. Once again, I don't really anticipate any issues surrounding that, but I am the one with the gavel. And I can throw it. No, I won't. So with that, I'm going to call you in order. The first person signed up today is Andy Vabora, who will be followed by Dana Terrell. And I'll say this, please just approach the mic and state your name.
Chair Farr and Commissioners, my name is Andy Babora. Nearly 5 years ago, the environment and interest in moving forward with an indoor multi-use sports facility changed and work commenced on outlining project specifications, siting options, capital needs, and operating costs. The economic analysis shows a significant return on investment in terms of overnight stays generated. And by leveraging operational staff from Willamette Lane or Lane County, the project will break even in as little as 5 years. Because the latest economic analysis scoped projects that are potentially too small or too large, Travel Lane County has contracted with SFA consultants to right-size the analysis and provide the commissioners up-to-date data. We fully expect the updated data will again show how effective an indoor multi-use facility is in driving overnight stays, filling the winter demand gap our lodging partners, restaurants, retailers, and others experience between late fall and spring each year. We believe it's important for the commissioners and county staff to evaluate the economic returns of all projects under consideration before making any decision about the allocation of new transient lodging tax revenues. The stadium scoped a size that will likely not be the final design, and yet the ROI is used to justify the project. Even using the data for a larger stadium, the economic returns won't stand up against a year-round indoor facility. I'm not saying that a stadium project isn't desirable. There is clear support for the development of a baseball stadium. I believe it's less clear the community supports a concert venue in downtown, and yet it will be the concerts and other activities that will drive that project's overnight stays. Strong community support for facility development has been seen time and again. Civic Park, YMCA, City of Eugene Parks, Willamette Lane Parks, and I'm hopeful county parks this fall when voters get a chance to vote on that levy. Allow the community to demonstrate their support for funding a summer demand generator and utilize new lodging tax revenues for a year-round indoor multi-use facility that will importantly begin to fill the winter demand gap the hospitality industry faces. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Babora. Dana Terrell will be followed by Martin Watkey.
Hello, Chair Farr and Commissioners. My name is Dana Terrell, and I am a small business owner and have been for the last 10 years. Can you believe that? Some of you I've worked with way past that, so you know that that's a milestone for me. We have about 23 employees with Terrell Group. We're a marketing agency, and some of our revenue is dependent on the hospitality and visitor industry. I'm also the incoming chair of Travel Lane County. We at Terrell Group really love where we live. I just love it here. And we have committed ourselves to live and work in this community. And in great part, that is because of your leadership as county commissioners, both you and the ones from the past, in creating and maintaining such a wonderful place. So let me just start by saying thank you for that. Transient lodging tax, I have learned, is a great business model. And as a small business, I appreciate that. It's one of those things where visitors come to our region and they spend good money on lots of things like hotels and restaurants and shopping, and then there's a tax collected. If we use that tax appropriately to market, to build products and on facilities, then it brings more visitors. So it's this wonderful cycle of refunding itself. Visitors come, they spend money, they pay the tax is used to attract more visitors. What I think is the temptation, and we've seen this over the years, is to take a portion of that TLT and use it for something we want, but is not the best use of refunding that cycle. So it's something that we may want as a community, but will not generate as many visitors as it could that could refund that bucket of TLT and bring more and more visitors into that cycle of revenue. So what I think is a critical need with this issue, and I know you have many critical needs in front of you all the time, is when you decide on how to use transient lodging tax, that you use it in a way that will refill that cycle of funding and will bring more visitors here to spend money in our economy and to spend more tax. So I ask that if you vote to increase the transient lodging tax, that you make a decision to allocate that money to the highest and best use in bringing more visitors to our community. And we believe an indoor, year-round, multi-sport facility will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Terrell. Kind of like old home, we got food for Lane County with the three of us here, isn't it? Thank you. Next is Martin Watkey, followed by Liz Dollinger. Martina, excuse me.
That's okay. Hi, my name is Martine Watkey. I've been part of Lane County's volleyball community for the past 27 years, and I've been the head volleyball coach for our high schools for the past 16 years. I'm currently at Sheldon High School. I've also been teaching in our 4J school district and currently at Kelly Middle School for the past 18 years. I've chosen a life that serves our youth, and I'm now the Webfoot Club Director. As a kid, club volleyball kept me engaged. It created a supportive environment where I was able to challenge myself, learn to be part of a community, and ultimately led to a college degree and a desire to help others find their path. Webfoot Juniors Volleyball Club has served our community for the past 24 years as a nonprofit volleyball club. We have partnered with Lane Events Center for a practice facility for the past 23 years. We are worried about losing our facility and the opportunity to helping our young athletes. Eugene has limited space available for local sports teams. I anticipate we'll have more players come out this season, but I'm worried that our current footprint is too small for growth and that the newer facilities in Salem and Portland are pulling our players away from Lane County. Our volleyball community strongly supports the use of a tax increase to be used in the development of an indoor multi-sport use facility on the Lane Events Center. I believe an indoor multi-use facility will allow our volleyball community and our other youth sport programs the opportunity to grow. Eugene has limited recreational space. Our club must travel for most of our tournaments in Oregon to compete. Our clubs, and we often lose players to Salem and Portland clubs because they offer year-round training and perks of weight room and study spaces that create a community feel. As I travel with our teams all over the country, we see updated facilities, we find local restaurants to go to and unique hotels and investigate their town. Eugene could easily be an accessible destination for volleyball events with the right
Thank
facility.
you for your public comment.
Thank you, Ms.
We need to move
Watkey.
to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. And you know, I can't keep an eye on the podium and the clock, so you'll hear the voice from the sky. Liz Gallagher, followed by Julie Johns.
Good afternoon, Chair Farr and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. As you said, my name is Liz Dolliger. I've been a resident in Lane County for 12 years. I'm a mother of two, one currently attending Sheldon High School, and my son graduated from Sheldon in 2021. As some of you know, I am very active in our community in both chambers of commerce. I am currently the Executive Vice President for Merite Hotel Management. Merite manages 6 hotels, in Lane County. We employ a total of 244 hotel associates and represent 668 hotel rooms. I am here today to respectfully ask that the Board of County Commissioners do the following. 1, ensure any increase in transient lodging tax follows past precedent and current state statute of providing funding to a confirmed specific project or facility that significantly increases tourism to our county. Number 2, I ask that the board share publicly the rationale and process for approval of any increase in TLT that is not in conjunction with a confirmed recipient of the increase in funds. 3, I ask that the board work in collaboration with the tourism community, many of whom are present today, to identify projects that the majority of tourism stakeholders support and work closely with our tourism organizations that do know best what will drive the best return on any increased tax to our overnight visitors. Tourism, as most of us would agree, is a driver of economic activity. This includes consumer spending in our community, jobs for our residents, and visitors bring diversity, vitality, and energy to our community. Tourism is also a very competitive space. As a previous hotel sales director for our Eugene hotels, I saw firsthand the business we lost to other areas that had better and larger indoor facilities during need time periods. Tourism investment needs to be purposeful and intentional in order to ensure the best outcome for all parties, which is why historically TLT increases have been accompanied by a specific project or plan. I would ask you to reconsider your timeline and make public any plans around how the proposed TLT increase will be used. Lastly, as a long-term resident with a family raised here, I am so excited we are talking about future development and facilities that support activity for our youth and offer year-round benefit to our county. As a local business representative, I am and will continue to be supportive of exploration of specific projects and/or facilities that are appropriate of a TLT rate increase. Today, I am just asking you not to approve it, but until those funds have an identified source. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Dolliger, and appreciate everybody staying right on the 2 minutes if you possibly can. Julie Johns will be followed by Carrie Skinner.
Good afternoon, Chair Farr and Commissioners. My name is Julie Johns. My family owns Territorial Seed Company, which is based in Cottage Grove. I have had the pleasure of serving on the Traveling County Board for about 15 years, this year as board chair. Our board is made up of a mix of hospitality and community business leaders who create an intersection between tourism and Lane County communities. We have an appreciation for what a healthy year-round visitor economy supports, including our favorite restaurants, attractions, activities, and retail. We are from all over Lane County, pooling the perspectives of South Lane, Oak Ridge, and McKinsey, Florence, and the metro areas. We are committed to the long-term economic health and livability of Lane County, and our official positions as a board are carefully chosen. Our strong emphasis on allocating any new transit lodging tax on growing winter visitors is driven by the facts of our local economy. We have a trough in revenue in the winter. I am very familiar with the seasonal changes of the community, and so this is definitely a need. This challenge can only be met by developing winter impervious facilities. An indoor multi-use sports facility will complement current uses at the Lane Event Center. Lane Event Center personnel can readily operate the facilities with hires covered by additional operating revenue. It has the potential to be an economic success and attract visitors, all while providing residents with healthy activity space. TLT is a vital source for funding projects that general fund is not available to cover. After decades of sharing the importance of winter facilities like convention space and sports space, we strongly urge you to invest this tax on hotels in the ways that return the most overnight visitors and visitor spending at a time of year our local economy desperately needs the revenue. Thank you for your consideration in this, and we appreciate your timeliness in looking at this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Once again, I apologize. You've all practiced for 3 minutes and you're only getting 2, so good job. Next is Carrie Skinner, who'll be followed by Melissa Koki.
Good afternoon, Chair Farr and Board of Commissioners. My name is Carrie Skinner, and I'm here as a Lane County citizen and community member, speaking and asking you to increase the TLT by 2%. In order to fund an investment in a multi-use stadium at the Lane County Fairgrounds, I have followed this conversation since the beginning for many reasons and urge you to recognize that this increase can be a needed investment in what makes this community great. There's a lot of talk about heads and beds and focusing this money on generating additional hotel beds, but I also want you to ask you to consider what makes Lane County great. It is our community and our organizations that give back to invest in this community. You have the opportunity to build a multi-use stadium that can revitalize the fairgrounds. It can attract concerts that currently don't come to this community. It can be a resilient gathering place during weather crisis and other disasters. It will also house the M's who have been tremendously strong community members, giving back to nonprofits and special causes. When the pandemic hit and the school districts locally, both 4J and Bethel, needed help, the M stepped up to be a true community partner to gather food, money, and supplies for some of our most needy families. The M's have been a strong and enduring partner to our local law enforcement community, specifically with the City of Eugene for National Night Out. They stand up for and give back not just what they are asked when they're asked to, and also when they see a community need. I'm proud to see the partnership that the M's have brought to the county and the investments that they are willing to make in making this multi-use stadium a reality. I urge you to vote to pass the increase in TLT and dedicated it to the multi-use stadium. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Skinner. Next will be Melissa Koki, followed by Noreen Dunnels.
Good afternoon, Chair Farr and Board of Commissioners. Thank you for having me speak today. My name is Melissa Koki. I'm the CEO of Koki New Century Companies. We employ about 65 people here locally. I'm here today to thank you for considering raising the TLT tax in an effort to improve the Lane County Fairgrounds with a new outdoor multi-use facility. As a local business owner, I can appreciate the investment that you will be authorizing with the increase of TLT and all the analysis that goes along with making a big decision like this. There are questions you need to answer and analyses you need to do. Luckily, you've also brought a tremendous partner to the table who is dedicated to manage and run the stadium. The M's have been in this community and are invested to making this a better place for everyone. I see this firsthand through my own volunteer work. The M's are just always there. They're about giving back and enriching the community as much as they are about making money. That is refreshing to find in a partner. They understand how to run a stadium, and they will find innovative ways to make the facility a true gathering destination for all Lane County residents across many types of interests. The increase in TLT that I hope you will authorize today will help move this dream of a stadium to a reality. Again, your vote today is about authorizing the increase only, but I want you to know that the community supports this stadium. The consensus among my business peers is that we hope to see this passed, meaning you are helping to ensure the dedicated community partner will stay here too. Thank you for your time. I enjoyed being part of this process.
Thank you, Ms. Koki. Noreen Dunnels will be followed by Ted Koopman.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Farr and commissioners. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I'm going to follow the same thread that you've kind of heard the last couple of speakers speak to. I'm Noreen Dunnels, president of United Way of Lane County. So we believe that the Eugene Emeralds significantly benefit local children and families and our community at large. The M's provide accessible, affordable opportunities for family entertainment, connection, and community through their community spotlights, highlighting local nonprofits and organizations serving our community and the children and families that attend their events. So here are a few other reasons why we support the 2% tax. You know, the front staff, the mascot, all of the players, they donate more than 600 hours of volunteer time a year, and that's on the conservative side. The team helps the Boys and Girls Club and American Cancer Society each year raise more than $50,000 to support their focus. They host a variety of community events, as you've heard, National Night Out with the police department, and held the first Pride celebration, complete with players wearing Pride Day uniforms. They partner with local nonprofits, at least 30 a year, on special stadium events, including a 50-50 raffle that raises more than $50,000 a year. On Sundays, the Emeralds transform into the award-winning Los Monarcos, sorry, I'm probably not mispronouncing that, de Eugene, complete with new uniforms, food, and music. Los Monarcos honors the presence, contributions, and dreams of our rapidly growing Latinx community. The Emeralds were the first professional sports team to wear uniforms celebrating Pride Day with our local community, neighbors, and friends. So let's have a prosperity mindset and support this tax for the Eugene Emeralds, as well as the larger stadium. And if we dream big, I think we can do all of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Dunnels. Next is Ted Koopman, who will be followed by Ken Brown.
Hello, County Commissioners. My name is Ted Koopman, and I'm the chair of Jefferson Westside Neighbors, which is where Lane Event Center resides. I'm not here on behalf of the Neighborhood Association or my board, but as its independently elected chair and a Lane Event Center neighbor. I support revitalizing Lane Event Center and think that the M's will be a good neighbor and that such facility would benefit the neighborhood and provide an impetus to address longstanding issues with noise, traffic, and parking. It's hard to think of a better investment for the economic development of public space, and the baseball season fills the summer slack time at Lane Event Center quite well. I was recently contacted by Andy Vibora of Travel Lane County, as well as Brian Obi, promoting the idea of an indoor track and athletic facility as an alternative to the proposed Eugene Emeralds athletic facility. We're well into this process, and the effort to derail an M's facility at this point does not sit very well with me. Moreover, I urge the commissioners to reject the argument that the primary purpose of the room tax is to create more business for hotels. However, I think that the proponents of the indoor track facility make a good case. In my estimation, both facilities will be a great benefit to Lane County and Jefferson Westside neighborhood. That is why I think the choice between the two is a false one. The fact that we have two great options is a gift, and we should seize the opportunity for maximum benefit instead of treating this as a zero-sum game. I urge the commissioner to go big and double down on the Lane Event Center with a much more robust increase of the transient hotel tax. Put it in line with Medford, Corvallis, Bend, or Astoria. There are no good reasons not to do it, as well as it will have a zero impact on stays. The Emmis facility can be phase one, since they were first, have done the hard upfront work, and are under a deadline. Phase two can be the indoor athletic facility, perhaps integrated with a much needed new ice rink or replacing other aged LEC facilities. Let's be bold, stop playing small ball, and swing for the fences to make the Lane Event Center a showpiece for our community. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koopman. Ken Brown will be followed by Bettina Hannigan.
Thank you, Board of Commissioners, Chairman Farr, and County Administrator. Thank you for allowing the community today to weigh in on this increase on TLT, or the vote of. My name is Ken Brown. I have been a resident of Lane County for 60 years, and I'm here to support the increase of this tax to build an outdoor multi-use stadium that I believe will be a great gathering place for our community. It also will be the home of the Eugene Emeralds. While I know that your decision today is not about the M's, I want you to understand, or want all of us to understand, the impact that the M's have on this community and how that impact goes well beyond a simple economic return. Many will talk about the economic return today. That is not my point here at all. I've worked with the M's now for 30 years, along with Major League Baseball as the chaplain and the executive director of the Hope Project. They invest, along with many other nonprofits in the community, and the investment in people and nonprofits bring returns that can never really fully be explained. I've watched the impact of this team and what it's done to the community. They give back as much as they get. They make sure that people are well served and engaged in many things. They don't look for credit in all the good work that they do, but I can tell you from personal experience that their impact is tremendous. While I know today this vote is really about just increasing the TLT, I want you to understand that this decision and the funds that could be invested in the stadium will bring returns to this community that cannot just be qualified in economics. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Bettina Hannigan will be followed by Michael Fear.
Good afternoon, Chair Farr and Commissioners. I'm Bettina Hannigan, and I'm the President and CEO of the Florence Area Chamber of Commerce. Our chamber wears two hats. Our first and primary purpose is for the economic development of our chamber members, and we are also the tourism marketing contractor for the city of Florence. We are the DMO, the Destination Management Organization. And I'm here today to discuss with you the 2%. Commissioner Farr has already heard my opinions, and I know that you've all received my press release where I talk about the importance of the authentic use of these funds. A little background about myself. I'm a fourth generation from Walla Walla, Washington. My great-great-grandparents homesteaded a wheat farm there, not weed, wheat. And then in the 1880s, my mom is a fourth generation from Coos Bay. So the Pacific Northwest is my home, even though I've only been in Lane County for 9 years. I'm going to tell you a quick story. The Chamber puts on the Rhododendron Festival, 115 years. This year will be our 115th year. They have a rhododendron court, it's a pageant. So a couple years ago, we had the queens and the princesses and the little princes. So the senior high school students are paired with elementary school students. And they came and they presented to the chamber luncheon why they wanted to serve on this rhododendron court. And they all went through and told us their stories about why they wanted to be a princess and so forth. And so I leaned in and I said, you all know that I've been a princess my whole life. They kind of looked at me like, well, yeah, that's obvious, Bettina. And I said, you know what the first job of a princess is? And they said, no. And I said, it's to be a servant. And it got real quiet. And one little second grade girl goes, "No." I know it's hard to be a servant, and I know the decisions that you make are difficult. But this decision to invest in this, in 2005, when the state of Oregon implemented a room tax, our tourism industry did not have the impact that it does now. Here we are years later, and tourism is the number 2 industry in this entire state. Please make sure that these tourism dollars, if you do increase, are invested in tourism because they affect the lives of the people in my community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannigan. It's kind of funny. My wife played Miss Hannigan in Annie one time. Next is Michael Fear, who will be followed by J.B. Carney.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Fear, and I'm the general manager of the True by Hilton in Springfield. By and large, the hotel community supports raising hotel occupancy tax only if it's spent on projects that are designed to generate more tourism and conventions. As an industry, we're one of the largest generators of tax. Studies have shown that for every dollar generated by tourism, that dollar is respent 9 times in the local community. As a small example, there are over 300 full-time housekeepers in this town that get their 40 hours a week or don't get their 40 hours a week based upon how many people are sleeping in the hotel rooms. They in turn spend or don't spend their wages in the community. The point I want to make today is that baseball is great as a community activity, but these hotel dollars really should go to support what the tax is designed for, tourism and conventions and facilities that will bring those in. And they have far greater impact than a ballpark. Baseball does not generate much occupancy. By comparison, we have a single volleyball tournament that meets every January that fills nearly all 4,000 of our area hotel rooms for 3 nights. We need that kind of business. The indoor track facility, a multi-use facility that we can see those kind of results multiple times a year. For our area, the indoor track facility will have a far greater impact than most anything else we could do. We're already known as Tracktown USA. With something like this, we could be Tracktown Planet Earth. Really, in my 45 years of in the hotel industry, have I seen really a more deserving project to support with our tourism and tax dollars, this track and indoor facility. Clearly, it serves the greater good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fear. J.B. Carney will be followed by Joe Waltoski.
Chair, Foreign Commissioners, my name is J.B. Carney, and I represent Travel Lane County. I'm just going to start today by saying that you threw me an off-speed pitch when I was looking for a fastball with the 2-minute timer. I want to take my time today to address a few of the comments that I've heard over the course of the last few weeks that I think may need a little more context. And the first is the fact that people don't pay attention to this tax. This tax has a very important weight when it comes to our community. Yes, maybe when you're traveling for personal leisure or on the company's dime, you don't look at the tax. But in my world, when we're talking to event planners and people looking to bring large sports tournaments into our community, that tax does matter. It could be the difference in us getting a large event that brings economic impact and us missing out on that opportunity, especially if we don't have the facilities to back it up. The second, this decision also has implications on our local businesses. Our local community brings in travelers. We don't just send travelers out. So when local businesses are bringing in their employees for training, when they're relocating employees to our community, when they're bringing customers in to buy products, this increase, an increase in TLT and CRT, will have impact on the way they operate and their financial viability. Third point I want to make today is around the concept of multi-use. As we talk about true multi-use facilities, to me, that means those that can operate in an economically viable way year-round. It sounds like particularly it's important to this board to fund and build a facility that can serve a number of needs. One of the most important needs is a facility that can be used as an emergency response center. Whether it's providing a secure space for our response teams to operate or a safe place for those in need of shelter after a catastrophic event, I think we'd want a facility that provides a protected and climate-controlled environment. This is an important vote you're about to make. The decision to raise these taxes should not be taken lightly. My recommendation is that we put the brakes on this decision to ensure we have all the information we need before making this the decision to raise TLT and CRT.
Thank
However,
you for your
if we are
public-
moving forward. Thank you.
Mr. Carney. By the way, I'm working on my three seam changeup, I think is what we call it. So, Joe Waltaski will be followed by Brian Mulvalson, and correct my pronunciation when you step up.
It's rare that you get my name right and not somebody behind me. Hi, my name is Joe Altasti, Commissioner Farr. Commissioners, my name is Joe Altasti. I'm the Director of Communications at Peace Health, the Oregon Network. I just wanted to come today and showcase our support for the Eugene Emeralds and particularly their work with the Children's Miracle Network at Riverbend. Over the years, the Eugene Emeralds have given over $50,000 to the Children's Miracle Network and an equivalent amount of tickets and support. But that financial donation to the Children's Miracle Network pales in comparison to the thousands and thousands of hours that they volunteered to Children's Miracle Network events throughout the year and fundraisers. And all of that money goes to support chronically ill children and their families. They're going through surgery or treatment at Riverbend. For Peace Health's perspective, the Eugene Emeralds have been a fantastic partner. It's bigger than baseball, and we encourage the commissioners to find a way to keep a valuable resource in town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Waltaski. Brian Mulvalson will be followed by Kamal Patel, who I know is Tina. I'll mention to anybody who happens to be keeping track before your time starts, we have 9 more in Harris Hall and 20 online testimonies. Please continue.
Commissioner Farr, my name is Brian Movelson. It's a hard one to say, so you were very close, actually. Hello, all of the commissioners. As I said, Brian Movelson, community member here in my 13th year here in Eugene. Wonderful place to live. I happen to also be an investor with AJ Capital, which is the ownership group of Graduate Hotels. And I am a consultant nationally for Graduate Hotels in their 33 United States markets. I also am a parent of a 16, 14, and 12-year-olds here in Eugene. And I'm a baseball coach. So it kind of touches me in a lot of different ways here. At the end of the day, I think we absolutely do need to increase this tax. I think this tax just brings us up to a kind of an average locally and actually below average nationwide. And certainly a lot of us travel, we go all over the country, we pay these taxes, and we build stadiums and arenas and multi-purpose facilities in California and Texas and Arizona, all over the place. And I hear a lot about, the year-round benefits. I think actually both of these projects are fantastic. And I think for us to not start the clock ticking and get this taxation going would be a mistake. You're looking at $4.5–5 million perhaps annually. We can do the math over the next 3 years. It's close to $15 million that we could have coming into this community. And I hear a lot about the winter, and I think there's a way to do it. I also look at Bend, great spot over there in Bend. They have the largest ski hill in the state, and they struggle. Sure, they're busy on the weekends, but they struggle as well. So in conclusion, we're lucky to have a very active community that's passionate about a lot of things. And I know you've got some tough decisions, but I do recommend the increase in the taxation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Movelson. Kamal Tina Patel will be followed by Pranav Patel.
Hi, thank you, Chair Farr and Commissioner. I'm from Alco Hotels. We have 5 hotels in Lane County. My family been here in Lane County for 25 years. I have 2 grown children who went to South Eugene High School, and it was tough not having a lot of activities for my kids to do. So I'm not only speaking on behalf of the hotels, but I'm talking as of behalf of the parents, how hard it was to have my children taking somewhere for winter and they were bored, So I know you have a hard decision to make raising the TLT. If you do decide to raise this, the room tax, I really encourage it should go to the tourism that also supports the hotelier on a winter terms, but also our kids in youth need something to do in the winter times while they're bored. And I believe the healthy kids, healthy community is going to bring a lot more to the Lane County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patel. Pranav Patel, followed by Sarah Smith.
Afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Pranav Patel, and I'm part of the ownership and management at Alco Hotels. We're a hospitality business that collects, remits transit and lodging tax. And as a member of the leisure and hospitality industry, Alco Hotels has firm roots in boosting tourism and demand for all businesses in Lane County. Alco Hotels supports a TLT increase, but only so that the funds are efficiently used to maximize tourism and economic output in Lane County. Alco Hotels supports the position that the best way to use the increase in funds is to create indoor facilities that help grow winter demand in Lane County. Winter tourism is a big challenge for Lane County's tourism-based businesses. Many businesses have to rely on the summer peak demand to keep their doors open. Creating an indoor multi-use facility that brings everyday demand and consistent tourism from around the state, such as collegiate sports and athletic organizations, would greatly improve economic growth during these winter times. As an indoor facility has the benefit of being able to be used year-long, and in particular during the rainy and wet seasons when athletic organizations can't use the outdoor facility that we have at Hayward Field. Another benefit to boosting winter demand and tourism in Lane County, an indoor multi-use facility would be a legitimate option for other sports tournaments to come and host here. In addition to being a sports facility, this facility can also benefit by becoming an emergency response shelter, as well as housing other non-sporting events that require indoor space. The creation of a new indoor facility would also bring a benefit to local youth organizations and other youth committees that can take advantage of this indoor space. Alco Hotels supports the Eugene Emeralds and understands their value to Lane County. However, we disagree with the primary use of the facility being catered towards a baseball team if the taxes were approved. The Eugene Emeralds do not provide a significant boost in tourism and travel currently in Lane County when these resources can be better spent on facilities that will bring in more winter demand because of their ability to host multiple organizations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Sarah Smith will be followed by Bobby Patel.
Chair Farr and Commissioners, my name is Sarah Smith. I am the Director of Operations for Incline Management and a community member for the last 22 years. Our properties are hotel properties, the Holiday Inn Express and Maverick Hotel next to the University of Oregon, and Quality Inn Suites over in Springfield. We also have more than 150 employees in the area. Our hotels positioned on Franklin do benefit from the proximity of the University of Oregon, but in the winter season, as we've all spoken to, that need diminishes greatly, and the University of Oregon cannot support the local hotel and restaurant tourism sectors alone. We need community facilities that draw sporting and convention events here as well. If you vote to increase TLT by 2% or 25% more than it is now, we believe the proper allocation of room tax funds should be used to create additional visitor spending for our local economy. Please ensure that the spending creates infrastructure that increases economic activity to our tourism industry. We are supportive of an indoor multi-use sports facility that will draw tournaments and serve local families. We are very hopeful that the county will develop, own, and operate such a facility for the benefit of both county residents and visitors. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Bobby Patel will be followed by Kurt Asmussen.
Welcome, sir. How are you, Mr. Barr? I'm over here as a parent, and I have a two beautiful daughter, which is they are going in South Eugene and Roosevelt, and they play the sport too. One of them volleyball, and another one is playing also volleyball too. Both are playing volleyball, and I'm supporting over here for indoor facility. And the main concern when they have a game, we have to go further out out from the Eugene all the way Salem and Medford and Roseberry and everything. We see that. If we bring that multiple use facility in our city, that will be helpful for us for two different kids. I don't have to run and she don't have to run to other side, you know. So I'm supporting that to indoor. That's all I want to say as a parent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. And a public thank you for work that you did 3 years ago, helping me with some very difficult issues on Highway 99. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Kurt Asmussen, followed by Arlene Moses.
Good afternoon, Chair Farr and Commissioners. My name is Kurt Asmussen. I'm Vice President of OB Hospitality, part of OB Companies. I want to express that I feel opposed to the increase in the transient lodging tax without a distinct path or clear vision of exactly where those extra tax dollars will go. I want to be clear, though, that I'm not necessarily against the increase, but want to feel confident that the additional tax revenues will go towards something that will bring the most benefit to the hospitality industry and our community as a whole, and also help drive higher occupancy and room nights, specifically in the hotel shoulder and off seasons. Also, to this point, and to my knowledge, I don't believe there has been enough beneficial collaboration or conversations with industry leaders to ensure that there is a clear vision of the future if the tax increase is approved. So I would certainly like to see that happen before a final decision is made. Thank you for my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Asmussen. Arlene Moses, followed by Bella Patel.
Thank you, Commissioners. I am fighting with the smoke, and the smoke is winning right now. So I apologize for my voice. My name is Arlene Moses. I've been a resident of Lane County for 13 years. My husband, Brad, and I have raised 5 children, 4 of which have gone through the schools in 4J. So we have 4 girls and 1 boy, and they've been very active in sports. And my girls have all been competitive all-star cheerleaders. Hence, I am now the owner of Competitive All-Star Cheer Gym here in Lane County. If you're not familiar with that sport, it's a sport that allows both boys and girls to do a routine of 2 minutes and 30 seconds of dance, stunting, cheering, etc. Currently, there are no facilities in Lane County that will allow our sport to host or hold competition in venues here. The closest city that will allow that is Portland. So, and our sport requires us to do what they call state of plays, where when you contract with the convention center, you're required to stay at particular hotels. So when for Lane County, if we can do that here in our area, we currently pull athletes from as far away as Medford all the way up to Seattle. And so this would be a big draw for not just Kingdom Lead as a program, but also for programs like TNT in Medford, and then Connect All-Stars up in Seattle, Washington. 26 seconds. Thank you for considering this. It would be a value add to my program and would allow local kids the opportunity to have the chance to cheer and not have the exorbitant costs of traveling to be able to compete in the sport that they love. Thank you for this consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Moses. Bella Patel will be followed by Kevin Patel.
Hi, we weren't sure to sign up for speaking or not. I'm here on behalf of Bella Patel and Kevin Patel. We just don't need anything to say.
Thank you. So this is Kevin Patel. Thank you. Sorry. And Bella and Kevin were the last people signed up for testimony in Harris Hall. We'll transfer now to online testimony, and Ms. Jones will handle the queue. Ms. Jones, can you handle the online queue? At which point I'll silence my mic and you have the con.
Yes, thank you, Chair Farr. At this time, if you have signed up for testimony for the public hearing that's being held, please raise your virtual hand, and I will call upon you to speak in the order that your hands are raised. I will begin with Peter Fleming, followed by Nick Larson. Peter, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your 2-minute public testimony.
All right, great. Thank you. Esteemed board and county commissioners, please accept this letter in opposition to Lane County Ordinance 2207. My name is Peter Fleming. I'm the general manager for Enterprise Holdings, running Enterprise National Alamo rental cars in Oregon and Southwest Washington. I was born in Eugene, Oregon, and graduated locally from Sheldon High School. Unfortunately, we can't support an effort to single out local Lane County customers to pay for this project, regardless of how great of a and valuable project this may be. At Enterprise, we have a long track record of taking public opposition on behalf of our local customers in opposition to tax proposals that single out car renters to pay for projects that have no connection to rental car whatsoever. I would also like to add a few points that might not be general knowledge of the public or the board. First, Oregon State Constitution in Article 9, Section 3 states any motor vehicle tax shall be used exclusively for the construction and maintenance and use of public highways, roads, streets in the state. Secondly, there may be a misconception among supporters of this ordinance that targeting car rental customers is a convenient way to export the tax burden for the project to tourists and other non-Lane County residents. And that's simply not the case. At Enterprise, we operate 2 fleets of vehicles, one at the airport and one in the home city. We have a fleet of over 800 vehicles in 4 locations in Lane County that are not located at an airport. These locations are staffed by 22 employees that live and work in Lane County. And the customers we serve are overwhelmingly residents of Lane County. In fact, 80% of our non-airport transactions are local Lane County residents who will be singled out to pay for this tax, not tourists or visitors. The additional 20% are also substantially local residents who many are not.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Nick Larson, followed by Greg Astley. Nick, I will unmute your microphone and you may be. Yes.
Ms. Jones, before you start, I'll mention that for the people talking online, the mic will actually be physically silenced at 2 minutes, but be prepared for that. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will move to Nick Larson, followed by Greg Astley. Nick, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment. Nick, I do show you are self-muted.
Is this better?
There you go. Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Nick Larson. I'm the director of Oregon Amateur Basketball. We run youth basketball leagues and tournaments. I'd love to say we do it throughout the state. Unfortunately, we no longer operate in Lane County. Every weekend, and we're talking about stuff in the winter, we're running stuff for 150, 160 teams every weekend. Due to the gym situation in Lane County and there not being enough gyms down here to operate, all those games are now being played in Corvallis, Albany area, or up in Salem. Prior to the gym shutting us out, the high school gym shutting us out down here, we ran about 10 tournaments a year. 10 tournaments a year in Lane County, about 150 teams per tournament. Of those 150 teams, there was probably about 40 to 50 teams every weekend staying in hotels, spending money down here. So the economic impact is real. On top of that, and we're talking, this is in the winter during a traditional dead period. On top of that, local teams are having to travel to Salem and to Corvallis for these games. There are no longer local games available to be played for kids in Lane County who want something beyond kid sports. So the tournament atmosphere, the tournament ball is essentially available to every major area of the state of Oregon, with the exception of Lane County. If we are to pass the transient lodging tax and we're able to open up additional facilities in Eugene, it is a multifaceted benefit to this community. First and foremost, we will be bringing dollars into this community. We will be bringing hotel stays back into this community in the winter. Kids in Lane County will be able to play locally and not have to travel. The last thing I want to add before it runs out, these tournaments are going to happen either way. This is a no-brainer for you to vote on. The only vote on is, are these tournaments going to happen in Eugene or are they going to happen somewhere else? Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Greg Astley, followed by Michael Cunningham. Greg, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment. There you go.
Terrific. Can you hear me now? Good afternoon, Chair Farr and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Greg Astley. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association. We represent over 10,000 restaurants, food service operations, and lodging properties around the state of Oregon and specifically in Lane County. I understand today's meeting is focused on whether or not to raise the TLT by 2%. But if you do decide to do that, I'd urge you to consider the fact that as hospitality businesses continue to try and recover from the last 2.5 years of the global pandemic, the shutdowns that occurred because of that pandemic, and the ongoing issues of inflation, rising gas prices, and continued supply chain issues, there's a clear need for more stable year-round revenue from visitors to help with that recovery. Summer demand is already high in Lane County as visitors enjoy their outdoor recreation, wine tasting, the various festivals and sporting events and other activities that are undertaken during the summer months when the weather is favorable. During the winter months and the shoulder seasons, however, especially January through March, visitors are less likely to visit and support the local economy. Therefore, we believe the best use of any new increase in TLT, if it does happen, is to grow the winter travel demand. The TLT reinvested in our challenging winter economy is good for local businesses, from hotels to restaurants and retail, and will support year-round employment. Additionally, increasing visitor demand in winter will grow the TLT revenue for all recipient programs and jurisdictions. And finally, any increases in TLT should be used in ways that are relevant to drawing visitors from more than 50 miles away who plan to stay overnight, putting heads in beds and continuing to increase the overall TLT revenue. Therefore, we would support investment in an indoor multi-use sports facility. The facility can accommodate a wide range of sports tournaments, events, and offer temperature-controlled emergency response in all seasons. It's concerning that the board is considering an increase without a plan in place, but it's clear that the best plan would be for a multi-use indoor facility for all parties involved. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker will be Michael Cunningham, and following Michael, I do not show any additional hands raised. So if you have signed up for public comment, you would like an opportunity to speak, please raise your virtual hand and I will call on you after Michael Cunningham. Michael, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment. Michael, I show you're muted. There you go.
All right, Pat Farr and the commissioners. Michael Cunningham. So I'm glad to be at today's meeting virtually. I'm in support of raising the 2% tax so we can build the Eugene Emeralds baseball stadium at the Lane County Fairgrounds. They've been a high priority. They've been a great baseball team. I know the general manager personally, and I think we need to use our tax dollars of the 2% tax to build a brand new baseball stadium just for the Eugene Emeralds. That will bring in a lot of people, especially for the Lane County Fair, the Eugene Emeralds baseball games right there at the Lane County Fairgrounds. We need to build a brand new stadium for the Eugene Emeralds. I'm in support of raising the 2% tax to build a brand new Eugene Emeralds baseball stadium. They are a wonderful ball club. So I've known the players throughout the years. They've done a national night out. They've done so many things for kids, like the I feel like the so they've helped kids out in the especially in the hospitals and stuff like that. We need to keep Eugene Emeralds right here in Eugene where they belong. We need to build a brand new baseball stadium there at the Lane County Fairgrounds, and I think that we need to keep them right here in town.
Thank you for your public comment. At this time, I do show a lot of people have signed up, but I do not show any other hands are raised. So I will give you one more opportunity to raise your virtual hand if you would like to speak. And Chair Farr, I am not seeing any additional hands going up, so I will return the meeting to you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones, for managing the online queue. At this point, I'll look back to Harris Hall and see if anyone else present in the room would like to testify to the Board of County Commissioners. Please step to the mic, identify yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Hello, commissioners. My name is Laurel Mathieson, and I work for the City of Eugene Athletics Department. As a lot of people mentioned today, that youth sports and gym space and all of that is super complicated and very, very limited in Eugene. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background for you all and those listening about how that actually happens. So essentially, back in the 70s and 80s, there was a nice agreement made with turf fields and indoor spaces that the cities and the community members and youth organizations would all share that space. And that worked out pretty well until, as you all know, the population got bigger and bigger and bigger, and more sports got added as the years went on. So currently, the city operates kind of as a neutral party to help get access to the 4J facilities. So that's indoors in middle schools, in high schools, that we work with. And then we work with all of the organizations who have been approved that are called Tier 1 youth users for the sports to make sure that they all have equal access. Currently, there is just not enough space for all of those teams to get access. So what you've seen and what you've heard about is club sports don't have a place to play. There's no place for tournaments since there's not a central location with multiple gyms all in one location, which leads to, as you've heard again, people going elsewhere for tournaments and things like that. Tournaments were a big mention, but also another important thing is community access. Right now, in order to play a sport, you have to pay to rent a facility to do that without having a true community equitable way to get everybody access to those same locations. So having a place like an indoor sports facility would really be just a great equalizer to get the community that's staying here into those spaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. Anyone else wishing to testify here in Harris Hall? Please step to the mic and identify yourself.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Ms.
My name
Robel,
is Brian Obi.
there's no clock up there. We keep it a minute.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I appreciate your patience, and I know you expected to be here a lot longer, so there it is. There it is. You know, I got inspired as I sat here and listened to people and heard really an opportunity for greatness that you have. You really do have an opportunity here. I think that people are not against the 2% roof tax. We're in the business, we're not against it. We just desire it to be invested in a way that will create and improve the economy here. It'll improve more jobs. We heard it from the restaurant people. We need and have the opportunity to create something very special. And you are in a very precipitous place to do that. And I appreciate your time, your energy, thinking of that deeply. I want to encourage you to travel to Spokane. I really do. We can provide you a van if you can't afford to take it. I'd love to get you. I want you to see that indoor facility. I want you to talk about how many people are coming to Spokane for it, what it's meaning in the track world up there, and to some extent a distraction from us. But even what I've heard about basketball today, I mean, it's inspiring, that opportunity. And I actually did not realize it was gone. I did realize the volleyball tournament that came in last January, because our hotel rooms and our restaurants, most particularly our restaurants, were full. And it's just wonderful. So I hope you'll think seriously about that. I know that it's been on your table for a long time. I appreciate the time you spent with me on it personally and the time you're spending here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. And with that, I'll close the public testimony.
One more.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll reopen the public testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. For the record, I'm Brian Clem, and I'm a resident of Salem, but I spend a lot of nights down here in Eugene now in hotels. I'm also a advisor to the AMS, and I'm working on another project that will create several thousand jobs in Lane County here in the next few years. I'll visit you on another time on that one. In my time, I got to cast 2 votes that raised $2.7 billion in taxes in the Oregon legislature. It's never easy. It's never fun, but one that largely raises it on tourists and can be reinvested in your community is a good investment. I encourage you to take that opportunity. My wife and I also own a variety of lodging facilities in Oregon and Hawaii. It's not the taxes that drive our visits at our places. It's the place, the amenities, the food, the drink, the viability of the town. So I, as a person who end up collecting these things and remitting them in a variety of locations, think that they're good investments and have always been pretty supportive in the jurisdiction of our properties. Last, I'm from Salem. We lost our minor league franchise. It's not fun. It changes things. It's a different venue. I would encourage you, don't do that. And last, as a 16-year member of the state legislature, don't give back state money. You got $7.5 million. You've got another $13 million from the M's. $20 million of outside money is not easy to come by. I would encourage you to try and make both projects work. Thank you.
And thank you, former State Rep Plum. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, then I'll close the public hearing, and Ms. Mokrahysky, turn it back to you for any further staff
I don't think we have anything to add, Chair. Just welcome your questions or comments.
Typically for a public forum, we'll invite commissioners to respond or remonstrate. So we're going to do either or. We'll take turns on that and begin with Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to just make a disclosure, even though today we're talking about the indoor track, or not the indoor track, but the TLT increase specifically because the indoor track and the M's have been stated here. I just want to disclose that I have received campaign funds from both the M's and hotelers who may and may not support this particular increase in TLT. I do not believe this is a conflict of interest, so I'll continue in the discussion, but I want to make sure that each time we discuss this as an ordinance, that I make sure that I disclose that information.
Thank you, Commissioner. Further discussion from the board? Then to the board we have before us second reading, public hearing on Ordinance 2207 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 4 to increase Lane County Transit Lodging Tax and car rental tax in support of tourism-related facilities in Lane County. With no further staff presentation, or do we have staff presentation?
No, but I was going to remind you, Chair Farr, that I believe in the reading of that ordinance is where we want to do that substitute language to reflect the Scribner's error that we cited earlier.
Thank you very much. In which case I will turn to the Vice Chair. If you're ready to.
Motion.
I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Entertaining motion. I'm looking for that piece of paper that I know I scribbled all my notes on the back of it. Is what I did with it.
Pardon me, 1 second. Commissioner.
Trying to get your attention before you went to that. I have a couple questions for staff.
Excellent. Then let's step back on the motion.
Deliberation of a motion.
Very good.
Clarifying.
And Mr. Bozievich.
And I will also say that I have received contributions from folks in the lodging industry. Don't think I've ever received one from the M's, but I have received one from some of the businesses that spoke in favor of the M's. So it'd be pretty difficult to separate all of that. So I don't believe I have a direct or indirect conflict of interest to continue talking about this ordinance. I just want to ask a couple questions because some testimonies come up, some things have been out on the internet back and forth, and I want to clarify a few things. In particular, a lot of testimony from the city of Florence and the area of Florence about Eugene-centric projects and all that. I know the administrator, I kind of tipped him off, I might be asking about this, but could you talk a little bit about what we spent in transient room tax or transient lodging tax in the Florence area relative to our collections over the last several years?
Sure, Chair, Commissioner Bozievich and Ms. Moody can elaborate on this. It's for those who are familiar with the TLT collections in Lane County, it's a rather complicated formula because it includes various jurisdictions that collect different amounts. So I'll do my best to give you sort of a high level overview, but I note two projects in particular over arguably the last decade in the Florence area. One, of course, was the construction of the Florence Event Center, which was approximately $4.1 million in county TLT contribution for that facility. And then more recently, 5 years ago, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, the Board of Commissioners approved approximately $1.2 million in transient county collected. So these are countywide TLT funds that the county collects that it remitted for these two particular projects. Again, one was the Florence Event Center in downtown Florence. The other was recently completed downtown signage and wayfinding improvements and beautification. If you've been to downtown Florence, there's been a number of investments there. Lane County invested $1.2 million in county-wide TLT in that project. So a total of approximately $5.3 million over what I would argue is probably the past decade. If you look at and this starts to get a little convoluted, but if you look at the TLT collections that are attributed to Florence, so the amount of TLT that Florence has generated, that Lane County collects, it's averaged anywhere from 400,000, maybe 10 years ago, to around 700,000 last year. So 400, right? I mean, it increases as the market increases over the years. So $400,000 to $700,000 annually. And if you break down just those two contributions, the average is about $500,000 per year over a 10-year period of time. Of course, that doesn't include the contribution that Lane County makes, approximately $2.8 million annually in countywide collected TLT to Travel Lane County to market the destination, which includes marketing for Florence. So I think there may be an additional piece that I missed there that Christine can fill in. I hope that made sense to all of you as well as others listening. So let me just make this last point. Sorry, I think it's pretty clear to us in our analysis that the amount of county collected TLT, county-wide collected TLT that has been remitted to Florence over the past decade has at least equaled the amount generated by Florence, if not exceeded.
And and Bettina, I see your hand up, but we can't recognize the audience outside of the public hearing. So my understanding was the event center project was actually a longer financing period. So it was greater than 10 years, what we're talking about. So, but my point is we have been investing countywide tax in the Florence area, and there is some relative balance. Some of the information was put out there, made it sound like we were shortchanging Florence. And I know in particular, Travel Lane makes Florence a major portion of their marketing for Lane County as a whole. So I just want to make sure people understood that we do have this balance geographically and how we distribute funds, and I do understand the concerns about the M's are very specific to Eugene when it comes to economic impact. And I understand that. And even an indoor sports facility may be somewhat centric, although I don't think it's as centric, because I think people that come here for something and a stay for the indoor sports facility may extend their stay based on marketing from Travel Lane County to go to the coast. So that's what we always hope. We get somebody here for a convention or some other event, we want them to stay an extra couple of days, and that's what that's the whole reason we invest in that Travel Lane County. And my history with the transient lodging tax in the tourism industry is I've pushed very heavily for a certain amount of accountability, and the folks at Travel Lane know I've been a pain in their backside at times. Required the whole contract to be rebid one year because we kind of weren't really following statute around how we contracted that. But I think it's ended up developing a stronger, better tourism industry here in Lane County. So I just wanted to flesh that out a little bit. I also want to make note of and flag this for the staff a little bit for the future. I want to make positive we have a really clear understanding of ORS relative to the use of transient lodging tax funds and car rental tax funds, because we also heard some testimony about that. I don't believe car rental tax is actually considered an automobile transportation related tax. I think it's defined as a service industry related tax. And that's why it can be utilized for things like currently right now, it pays for a lot of our parks support. But I just want to make sure we have a really clear understanding of that, because as I really read some of what's considered a tourism related facility out of ORS, it talks about a conference center, convention center, or visitor information center, and other improved real property that has a useful life of 10 years or more and has substantial purpose for supporting tourism or accommodating tourist activities. And that definition, making sure that whatever project we choose to support, if we choose to vote for this, is going to be very important to me, to make sure that we don't tread across the statute boundaries on this. And I want to reiterate something I've mentioned this morning, and maybe have staff just double check me on this. There's been a change in who collects transit room tax in Lane County. We had contracted with the city of Eugene to collect our countywide transit room tax. The city of Eugene's getting out of that business and contracted with the Oregon Department of Revenue. Now we are also contracting with them. Under that contract with the Oregon Department of Revenue, we must give 90 days advance notice of any change in the rate to which they will be collecting. So if we wish to start collecting a new increased transient lodging tax by the first of the year, we basically have till October 1st to notify them. Am I being completely accurate? I want to confirm that with staff.
Yeah, and you approved that agreement on your consent calendar today, the agreement with the State Department of Revenue.
So I don't know if the chair signed that order yet, but I'm sure he'll be signing it today. So that is part of what is involved in this, and one of the reasons why we're here today, why we're kind of in advance of some of the decision making around which facility to spend this on, or any facility to spend this on. But I think there's very clear evidence right now from all the testimony received, and I want to thank everybody for their testimony over the months, because we've been hearing from the public for months now in public, either in our general public testimony or by email or today, about these projects. But it seems that everybody agrees on one thing. We need to have some kind of investment in our tourism industry here in Lane County to start driving a higher rate of tourism, because we understand it is becoming such an important industry to this county and generates such a huge amount of economic activity and bleeds over into lots of other industries. 9 to 1 on the dollar spent. That's a lot of activity. So I understand that. So this is probably that first step to having the ability to make those investments. The next step, although it seems a little bit cart, horse, chicken, egg, which came first, it is to figure out how we're going to best invest that. So I think today's decision is around giving notification to Oregon Department of Revenue and setting up the ability to invest, not so much whether or not we're going to what we're investing it in yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bozovich. Commissioner Burning.
So by the way, it's Chair Farr started this, if you recall, when we were all kind of waiting, it was quiet, by saying, we all want what's best for the community. We all have a different sense of that. But regardless of what occurs, here we are, very few masks. We are all of Lane County, and the decision today, even though most of the testimony related to advancing one of two primary, I'll call them indoor and outdoor, but one of two primary investments, the decision before us is not that. The decision before us today is do we create a bigger pot so that there are dollars to invest in creating a better Lane County? So I wanted to clarify that. I also want to clarify, while a lot of the discussion of an indoor facility focused around the fairground, this body specifically in developing an ordinance did not focus on the fairground exclusively, but we focused on Lane County owned facilities. That, by the way, is why our next agenda item that Commissioner Farr and I have pushed forward at the bequest of the Springfield Community Development Corporation is looking at Short Mountain, at transfer station viability, because that's another area that the community of Springfield is interested in as it relates to that. So, and we do have facilities. It's not as if we don't. There happens to be a 100,000 square foot facility in Springfield that was named after a guy that used to run Lane County Parks and then ran Willamette, named the Bob Kiefer Sports and Rec Center. And as some of our folks have testified their own personal experiences, I can share that my granddaughter was a member of the Webfoot group, and her little junior high school volleyball team did well at a statewide volleyball tournament that occurred at the Kiefer Center about a year ago. So I wanted to clarify what we're voting on, what we're not voting on, and the fact that this level of engagement is absolutely wonderful coming out of a dark time of COVID. So I thank everyone for being here. I took 4 pages of notes. Most of the notes don't relate to the decision we're about to make, but they absolutely relate to the discussion and the debate. And if there's any way to do what the folks that testified for dreaming big can do, maybe do both of these. We will thoroughly investigate that during this very lengthy public process. As Commissioner Bozovich said, this isn't the first time we've been talking about it. And if you could read some of the emails we've gotten, you'd realize that the passion for both of the functions that have been discussed is huge, and I see that as a win for Lane County. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Further discussion? Is this for the motion or for discussion?
Well, it seems like we're doing a little more remonstrating before getting into the details. So maybe this will actually, thank you, Chair. This will actually help along those lines of keeping us really focused after a motion is made, assuming it's seconded, to really focus on the content of the ordinance. I just want to really appreciate everyone who online, who came out to speak in person, particularly the hoteliers and the tourism industry folks. And I understand seasonality. I actually moved to Oregon in 1984 and lived on the coast, lived in Yachats for the first 3 years, and we made our living by, I waited tables and my husband tended bar and cleaned hotel rooms. So we absolutely not only get the industry, but its seasonality. And one thing I can tell you, anybody else here that's waited tables, is you chat with your customers, and in the winter months in Yachats, you get a lot of time to chat with your customers. And most of them were repeat customers, and most of them would fall in love with the region and come back over and over at different times of year. So this idea of sort of causation, correlation between we make one investment in one facility to do one thing doesn't really hold up. It's about creating a sense of destination and community for a region. So our job, regardless of how we end up investing these dollars with the partnership of Travel Lane and the industries, is how best to leverage the investments broadly and not be quite so tied to, if we build this thing, it will do precisely this number of hotel stays or what have you. The things that we do know for a fact is we have a lot of issues in this community. And so I also want to just emphasize that there are very specific restricted uses of specific restricted types of money that we can collect and allocate. And so we've heard over these last several months, lots of input. Well, why are we spending money on this when we have a housing crisis? What are we doing about healthcare access? Why would we build X, Y, or Z? We have public safety gaps in that system. Why are we spending money? It's because there's a very specific and prescriptive use of these dollars. And I think I can speak for all of my colleagues here at the dais. We take very seriously being good stewards of those public funds and making sure we're using them appropriately and taking the best advantage of what's available to us. And there just simply isn't enough available for all the many things that we want to do. As far as when Commissioner Burney said, if you could read all the emails we get, you can, because they get uploaded into the board packet. And I just want to give my personal commitment. I read all of the emails and comments. I try to get through all of them before the meeting, in fact, so that they're part of what's in my head as we enter into these processes. But the things that we know for sure is our Lane Event Center and Fairgrounds is an incredible resource, a publicly owned asset, and it's a little bit neglected and it needs some improvement, and the community deserves that. We know we have a lot of room to grow all over Lane County with all kinds of industries and projects. We know that we want to need more indoor space. We know that the M's need a new home and they're a valued entity in this community. And we know there's all kinds of new events we don't even know about yet that we could be attracting with some kinds of new facilities that we might build. And we know we need a convention center. And we know that visitors love it here. And we who live here 365 benefit from how much visitors love it here. So those are all the things that we know. We know we're going to head somewhere great. And we know that it's that kind of innovation and partnership that's going to get us there. And this increase really just puts some gas in the tank for that trip wherever we end up going with it. So thank you again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you for the words. With that, Ms. Walker, I was going to ask for the motion, but first I telegraphed a question earlier, and that is I do know that annually we expend a lot of resources, a lot of money. We send to our nonprofits who provide hotel rooms for people who otherwise would be on the street during the coldest months of the year. It's a part of what we call our winter response, and we've been doing it for a lot of years. I know that those hotel rooms do currently are subject to TLT, transient lodging tax. No way around that at this point in time, because that just is the way it is. But at some point in the future, we may have a discussion and maybe have some comments on that right now regarding how do we relieve that. Mr. Mokrowski.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. So thankfully, Lauren and Christine and Jeff Kincaid, our management analyst and county admin, did some research, and we did identify, this is not in your packet because what's in your packet is the change, the proposed change to the code. But if you look in Lane Code Chapter 4, get your pencil out, 4.005.125, exemptions, and I'll just read this for you. It states no this is the current Lane County Code. It says no TLT shall be imposed upon, and I'll read a few of these. D is probably the most relevant to your question, but a dwelling unit in a hospital, healthcare facility, long-term care facility, or other licensed, registered, certified by Department of Human Services or OHA. B, a dwelling unit in a facility providing treatment for drug or alcohol abuse, providing mental health treatment. C, a dwelling unit that is used by members of the general public for temporary human occupancy fewer than 30 days per year. And then D, I think this is to your question, Chair, a dwelling unit, the consideration for which is funded by a government agency directly or through a voucher, and the purpose of which is to provide emergency or temporary shelter. So that's in the existing code that says we do not collect transient lodging tax for facilities that meet those definitions.
Excellent, Ms. Margaret. That's good. That is good news. I'll pass that along to the Mental Health Advisory Committee. And I'll ask a follow-up question outside of the meeting. Are we 100% up to code on that? Do we actually not collect that tax, and how do we do that? So that's not for discussion right now. But I don't know how hoteliers are able to differentiate, and I'd like to personally know how that happens. So, very good. Thank you. With that, I think we are, Vice Chair, ready for a motion.
I am, and I just want to clarify, the Scrivener's error is about what's in the packet. It doesn't actually change the language, the ordinance language. Is that correct? Correct. Thank you. Good.
And just before you do that, this is a second reading, so any one of you could have said, let's read the entire ordinance, because that's what the second reading.
Vice Chair Krieger?
Yes.
The Scrivener's error is actually in the language of the ordinance. In the right after the cover page of the ordinance is the actual code changes, which are part of the ordinance.
So the sheet I have in front of me, the effective January 1, is part of moving to adopt the ordinance?
Yes.
Thank you. I will read what I think is the proper ordinance. And then if we can get a second, but we need to amend it. Diana, will you let us know?
Thank you. And prior to getting the second, and Mr. Blythe will take a look at that also, I'm sure. Let's just make sure the motion itself is accurate. So please.
So I'll move to adopt ordinance number 22-07 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 4 to increase Lane County transient lodging tax and car rental tax in support of tourism-related facilities in Lane County. Effective January 1, 2023, each occupant shall pay an additional tax in the amount of 2% of the rent after providing for the cost of administration and any refunds or credits authorized by this subchapter. The revenues collected from the tax imposed by this subsection shall be used for funding tourism-related facilities in Lane County as further described in LC 4.005.175H.
That, and I'm getting affirmative that that is the correct motion, and we'll make certain that that is reflected online. The accurate motion itself will be reflected online as quickly as possible, if not already. Then we have the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck is Ordinance 2207, etc. Discussion to the motion. We've had discussion, and subsequent to this motion, there'll be a lot of discussion regarding how this motion goes into effect. Mr. Mokraski, this is an ordinance, so it requires a roll call vote.
Commissioner Burney.
Aye.
Commissioner Buck.
Aye.
Commissioner Trieger.
Aye.
Commissioner Bozovich.
Aye.
And Commissioner Farr.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you for all your work. Thank you for everyone here today. Your time is valuable for you to spend this much time today, but the time you've spent already and the time no doubt you will be spending in the future on this, thank you so much.
And feel free to stay.
Commissioner Farr, I've got a question.
You know, I'm not certain who's saying that. Ms. Jones, is someone online asking a question?
One of the panelists, the attendees had not been muted from prior.
Thank you. At this point, we have no place on the agenda for questions from.
We are still in a public meeting session, folks. If you could help us move forward.
We'll take a 5-minute recess while the room empties. 5-minute recess while the room empties. reconvene the afternoon session of the Board of County Commissioners. Welcome back to Harris Hall. Ms. Mokraski, we're moving down our agenda, and we're moving on to item 15. Let's see, what is it? 15A, which is discussion and action in the matter of determining location of new central transfer station. And Mr. Mokraski, you have a panel with you today, and I'll let you introduce them. And been looking forward to this discussion. It's not the first, it's not the last. It's an ongoing discussion. Ms. Mokraski.
Thank you, Chair. Dan Hurley, our Public Works Director and former Solid Waste Manager, and Jeff Orlandini, our current Solid Waste Manager, here to report back to the board on an assignment that you gave us to come back with information about what it would look like to move the primary transfer station in Lane County at Glenwood. So Jeff, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm excited to be here and hopefully come out of today or soon thereafter with kind of some guidance on whether we're going to stay in Glenwood or move and potentially what that move would look like. And so our intention today, this is our agenda, is really to serve as a basic overview with the goal of being able to get more clear direction on how we proceed with building a new central transfer station. I will say that it's our opinion that we really need to rebuild regardless of where we go. And I think that's a key fact for us, is that if we stay in Glenwood, we don't intend to keep that transfer station the way it is for 30 more years. So we would look to then say we're staying in Glenwood, and we'd want to rebuild almost the entire transfer station. And so I think from a cost standpoint, that's important to know that it's not like if we stay, it's free. We still would need to do that rebuild. And some of that's because of the aging infrastructure. We're dumping money into it every year to put Band-Aids on it until we kind of know what we're doing. And so I wanted to start there so that we all are kind of on the same page. And then, again, the intention is just to go through the background, the study that happened a few years back, and then the 4 options as we see them. So we'll start, initially before, I guess, 9 a.m. this morning, we were kind of under the impression that, the main location for an indoor track facility, the idea was the current transfer station. I know now that that's in flux somewhat, but I think regardless of what happens with that initiative, we do need to know whether we want to stay in that area or leave. And so I think this decision is still very important. And we'll get into what a timeline would look like in a little bit, so you can get a sense of how quickly that could happen if pressured to do so. And so it does provide many logistical advantages and is suitable for a total rebuild. So we could rebuild Glenwood while staying open at Glenwood. And so location-wise, it's a great location for us. It has adequate size. It has the ability to rebuild while we stay open. There are other properties, and we'll look at some of those areas that also would fit our needs. And so Glenwood is certainly not the only place that we can be, and it doesn't force our hand in terms of looking at sizes and other places. There are other properties available that would meet the needs for some of the background that we're going to look at. In 2019, we hired Good Company to do a system-wide analysis or a transfer station analysis. And that was really to determine, are we adequately sized? Do we have the elements that our stakeholders desire and the public? And to get that feedback. They conducted interviews with over 20 stakeholder representatives, including folks from the waste and recycling businesses, waste reduction, prevention, and reuse nonprofits, the cities of Springfield and Eugene, and the University of Oregon. Comments and general feedback from the interview process not only provided us a great background into the current and future needs of the community, but also was consistent among those taking part in the interviews. Separation of recycling area, what we call a dump bed area. So those larger trailers that have the automatic ability to dump without, you having to kind of do that yourself, and the general public. So people like me who have to just kind of throw that back out by hand, separating those areas so that, it's safer and it's quicker, depending on what you're doing, was a constant theme, as well as really expanding on what we do. So we kind of call it the one-stop drop for the public. People do enjoy coming in and being able to get rid of yard debris, metal, glass, cardboard, their construction and demo, everything, even if it costs them a little more to get rid of their yard debris at Glenwood, because we then got to go pay our Rexius to take it. They like that one-stop drop feature, and we found that theme throughout in these interviews. And so many communities have recycle centers here, and then you go 10 miles down the road if you want to, dump your garbage, and then you have to go somewhere else to do all those different things. Our community really does seem to enjoy having everything in one place. It also helps us sometimes with diverting material. Somebody comes in, they have cardboard, they thought they was going to the dump. We say you can get rid of that for free before you come over here. So there is a benefit also to our recovery there. And then a lot of what they talked about was improvements. So this is a pretty compelling slide for us because it shows you kind of the three categories that Good Company identified. Category A, we're basically doing everything on there, but you can see all these areas where we do, it was identified that people would like to see more expansion. So we have a lot of recovery, but we don't have everything. We don't have a reuse area where people say, well, this is a bicycle, I don't want it anymore, it doesn't have a front tire, but can we put it somewhere if somebody needs one, they could grab it. That just goes in the metal bin. It's recycled. That's great, not as high a value as reuse. And so people, that was a common theme that they would like us to have more partners on site or ability to maybe stop things from having to go recycle or into the dump, as it were. And categories B and C are currently being explored as an option at Short Mountain. And this is really where we get into a sorting facility. We'll be coming back to this body in November and again December to talk about our progress there. And so that is something we're looking at as well, but not necessarily in a one-stop shop. So our options as we see them, and you may have some other ideas, the Glenwood remodel option, it's a fantastic option from a standpoint of we're already there, it works for us, there's enough space. It is the cheapest option as we don't need to purchase land. Site prep is very minimal because it's already pretty much every inch that we'd be using is already paved and pretty leveled out for us. We could use, the scales, the feed booths, the current recycle area, our mechanic shop, our fuel island, and a few other buildings that currently exist there. We could continue to use those as is. So it is the cheapest option, although these things are very, very expensive. And so, when you're talking $2 or $3 million on a potentially $50 million project, it may still be worth it to move. We do believe a new facility would be $30 to $50 million. I know that's a large range. I would have told you pre-pandemic that it was closer to 30, and I'd probably tell you that a year ago it was over 50. And now we think, prices are starting to come down a little bit on some of these, but kind of depending on what we're doing, how big we want to make it, property, things like that, it could be 30 to 50 million, with Glenwood being on the lower end of that spectrum. Short Mountain is an option that's been talked about a lot. We own that property. There's definitely a reduced haul time on our end for what people dispose of. It's blocks instead of 6.5 miles. There are some disadvantages. We are in flux right now with, if we do a mixed waste processing facility, we need to site that somewhere that won't be touched for a minimum of 30 years. And we couldn't also put a transfer station in that same place. So we'd probably be building a transfer station in a future cell, and we'd be tearing it down in 30 years completely. And so that's a bit of a disadvantage. Although location-wise, from a standpoint of customers, it would be a positive because they wouldn't be sharing a lot of cross traffic with commercial haulers and others. So that's a big decision with the mixed waste processing facility. We also, some of the things that are a little concerning would be, we have had complaints over the years from folks on Dillard Access Road about the increase in traffic and especially larger loads. Our commercial haulers, for the most part, aren't using that road, but this would certainly impact them with those dump beds and the general public. For context, a very busy day on a Saturday, Glenwood's we've hit 1,000 customers. So we're talking about putting 1,000 vehicles on 99 and over into the landfill. That's a big concern for us in terms of that traffic and sharing that space with our commercial haulers. And then it would be very difficult to spread the services out. So people like separate areas. In fact, ideally, we'd have a separate recycle area on site you could just get in and out of. You wouldn't have to share that with people dumping. It'd be really hard at Short Mountain to have utilize as much space in the same way, although not necessarily impossible, but longevity is something that would be a concern. Glenwood was built in 1976. So while it's exceeded its lifespan, that's over 40 years, the thought of building at Short Mountain and potentially having to rebuild again in 30 is a little bit of a concern for us. Then we could move and go to one new location. We can construct any of these while Glenwood's still open, so that's always a positive. We were looking recently at properties. They were about 218,000 per acre. We need probably at least 14 acres. And so it's around the 3 million range for property. Some of the properties were closer to 4 or plus. So, I mean, it kind of depends on where you're going. So you're looking at 3 million for land and 30 to 50 for the facility. And again, we haven't talked about whatever happens with Glenwood for selling that property versus donating it. Obviously, we would prefer to sell that and be able to then apply that towards a new facility. And so we do feel like this would be, a nice option. It would be similar to what we're doing now, one large facility that serves the whole community. We could go with 2 smaller transfer stations spreading out to maybe split some of that. If you go to one side, West Eugene, you don't have folks from way out in Springfield going all the way across town. So you could kind of have 2 new smaller transfer stations. It's more costly. You still need to have all the same features that the community wants at both stations, even though they're smaller. It would probably look similar to maybe our Florence transfer station in terms of size between those two and function. So, we can't have a really big transfer station. Doesn't allow us to get our transfer trailers in and out really easy and not have to kind of rotate them around. It gets confusing, but we would want to look at something similar to what Florence would look like. Again, would be doable. Again, 2 pieces of land, 2 facilities, and we still need to house all of our headquarters for our staff. We need to have a place to park all our trucks. We need a fuel station. So we'd still choose one of those to be our main kind of hub and have to have everyone going there. So I'll give you, this is the timeline, and I'm hesitant to say 3 to 4 years. That is a super aggressive timeline. If I had $60 million in my pocket right now and you said, get out of Glenwood as soon as possible, and we could buy a piece of land, we could design it and then permit it and then build, we might be able to do that in 4 years. But that is how long it takes to be able to go through this process. They're not super fast. Obviously, if we stay in Glenwood, the timeline doesn't matter as much. We could build a new one as soon as we design it and find out a way to fund it. So funding is going to be one of the main things for us. How do we pay for the new facility or facilities? And like I said, that really needs to happen regardless of if we move or not. We really are at the point where we need to build a new state-of-the-art facility that can serve this community for 30 plus years. The other thing that could be worrisome is leachate. So currently Glenwood is our leachate discharge point. We move out of Glenwood, we need to find a place to take 20 million gallons of leachate. Obviously, we would continue to push for some help in Goshen to get wastewater facilities in Goshen and build a pipeline. So we're not taking 3 tanker trucks, doing 27 loads a day and driving further potentially than Glenwood and maybe adding more tankers because we can't get as many loads in. So that is certainly a concern, but one that we've also been concurrently working on trying to find a more long-term solution to.
Jeff, how many tanker loads a day?
So we can get 9 per tanker, and there's 3 tankers. So that's 27 loads a day on a pretty busy day. It's, I think, about 175,000 gallons.
Just a reminder, that's trucks up and down the freeway with nasty stuff on them. Okay.
Yes, with 6,500 gallons per tanker driving down the road. Yep. Currently 6.5 miles each way. So that's something that we'd consider, but we have been thinking about other options for that as well. So this may, kind of quicken that timeline. So these are the current issues that as we kind of see them, we're really finding it difficult. Our pit at Glenwood is deteriorating. So we're throwing $50,000, $100,000 at it. at a time to try to make sure that it stays solid. But, you know, we don't like throwing upwards of $200,000 a year on improvements at Glenwood when we could be looking at long-term rebuilding it or moving somewhere else. So it's hard to dump money into a facility that is aging and is in need of, you know, rebuild really. We've been looking for land. I was looking in the last year with the realtor, and it's difficult because land pops up. Do you pull the trigger on purchasing land or not? So that's what we're really looking for is, you know, some of that direction to say, you know, this is the best option, move forward with that. Then we can look at purchasing land. We can look at permitting. We can start design process based on the land that we're able to find. And the need for clarity was, again, just, you know, allows us to use our current funding in the most effective way to know where we're going to be. It would be nice to know if we're going to get, you know, if we sell Glenwood or we move out of Glenwood, if we're going to get money for that land is a big deal for us in terms of being able to purchase new land and develop a new facility. And then, you know, we can determine the impacts on Short Mountain, and there will be impacts no matter what we choose in terms of, you know, our operations, where we're hauling from. So these are our recommendations, and essentially the preferred option for us in, you know, knowing that we've been talking about leaving Glenwood for well before my time in this division, I feel like, you know, that's going to be a continued pressure. You know, our first choice would be to find one new location to go to, purchase one piece of land, and build a new transfer station there. Our second option would be to stay in Glenwood, and that's simply because of cost, really why it's option 2 above option 3 there. We don't really like the idea of expanding the number of transfer stations we have. We have the most transfer stations for an area our size of anywhere I know of, and adding another one and that operation doesn't appeal to us greatly, although there are some interesting scenarios we could look at in terms of building something way out west Eugene that would be big enough to serve Veneta as well and replace that existing transfer stations. There could be some interesting solutions there, but staying in Glenwood's our second option. The third would be the 2 new locations, and really the landfill for us is the fourth option based on what we're trying to do at the landfill and the operations. And honestly, we'd rather build a transfer station in Goshen and have that be the current, like a one-stop shop for the whole community. And then we could just bring that waste, you know, a mile over to the landfill. But just with our design plans for the landfill, that's not our preferred option. So that is my very quick rundown of where we're at and what we see as the options. We can take any questions or discussion.
Thank you for the presentation. Mr. Hurley, anything to add?
Just one thing to add. Several years ago, the city of Springfield did their refinement plan for Glenwood, and we don't fit in that long-term vision. You know, they would like to rezone that and do other things with that area. There's also the issue of the co-location that we enjoy at the Glenwood transfer station with Santa Pac being next door and EcoSort. So my predecessor used to call it Garbage University there. But we've been in limbo. So I've been with the county almost 18 years. We've been in limbo this whole time and have been reluctant to invest into the facility. So that's why we only have new siding on the freeway side of the transfer station there. The other 3 have the 40-year-old siding that's on there. But we've just been reluctant to put money in there, not knowing if we're going to stay or leave. So some direction today would be terrific, so we could get out of that limbo and reinvest in the facility if that's where we're going to stay.
Thank you, Director Hurley. So today our decision should be regarding these 4 options and discuss what we at this moment in time lean toward. Now, once we do settle on an option today, would that set any wheels in motion, or does that just kind of give you a settling point for the future consideration?
I think it would for me. I think we have a couple options, right? We could choose one of these, or we could say the board recognizes that we don't want to stay in Glenwood. It doesn't fit in with the plan, and you know, come back to us with one of these 2 options or tell us more about those. You know, that would be fine as well. And it would start wheels in motion with the realtor again. We'd look at properties and then look at how we could purchase a property and determine, then how we could bring on a designer who could come in and help us design the new transfer station. So I do think it would further those wheels and those steps to get out of Glenwood, or vice versa. We stay in Glenwood, we would certainly be more aggressive on designing this transfer station in the context of, the available space.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation. Ms. Mokryski, we're ready for discussion then? And let's open it up to the board for discussion. Commissioner Bozievich.
So I get the options. My only real questions is I feel like we're looking at this in just the lens of the transfer station and the transfer station alone. And I'm having difficulty placing that in sync with the single stream facility and where we need to be if that moves forward, how that affects where we're taking our garbage stream. Is it still come to a transfer station, then go to this single stream facility, or how's that work? So maybe if you could explain that impact on this decision a little bit. And then secondary to that, I kind of wonder what's going on with the Goshen wastewater system, because that would eliminate the issue of our discharge point relative to decision making is looking at options. But I think staff's analysis is purely at only the transfer station question looks pretty strong. But I kind of want to understand that single stream, and also if anyone has a crystal ball on the Glenwood wastewater system, and if that's anywhere in the event horizon.
I'll speak to the first part and then let Dan speak to the second. So the waste stream that we're seeing at Glenwood's been radically changed since 2017 when we had all the commercial haulers go directly to landfill. The single stream mixed waste processing is really focused on, and we'll come back to you with this, organics and pulling organics out before they go into the landfill and collecting that gas. We don't have a large organic fraction at our transfer station, even Glenwood. In fact, so much so that, we have more sprinklers and stuff than we did because it's just dusty, because it doesn't have that wet waste, kind of absorbing all of that anymore. So for us, the transfer station at Glenwood, just a larger version of what we see at our rural communities, although one could argue the rural communities have more organics in them because a lot of people use that as their sole waste stream. So we don't think that we would do the same thing we are now. We would collect the garbage, we'd put in a trailer, we'd bring it to the landfill, and with our partner, if we had a single stream processor, when we look at those loads, they're kind of going to say that one there, that one to the landfill. And so they would still have the ability to do that. So it wouldn't, in our mind, it wouldn't impact the ability to do the single stream. It just impacts our haul a little bit, if that makes that. And then I don't know the stats of Goshen.
So, and then let me just continue on that. Several years ago, we made the switch where the garbage trucks picking up residentially here could no longer go to the transfer station at Glenwood. We were just beyond capacity, and they have to take their waste to the landfill directly now. So we are exploring contracting with bulk handling systems. They were the successful proposer through a RFP process for a mixed waste processing facility. And we'll be back in November and December to talk about that project. But their proposal, the garbage trucks would come with that mixed waste to that facility, which we're envisioning at the landfill. That facility would also be able to take commingled recycling. Right now, commingled recycling is dumped on the floor at EcoSort next to the transfer station and then trucked all the way up to Portland. So I don't see that the relocation of the transfer station would impact either the mixed waste processing facility or the commingled recycling. On the topic of the leachate transport, we would love to see a leachate pipeline and connected into a wastewater system for Goshen. The major hurdle we need to cross with that is a metro plan amendment. So currently, MWMC can't service outside of its boundaries, and would need to amend the metro plan and MWMC's regulations to be able to accommodate that. We had planned to discuss that with you and the elected officials of Union and Springfield at a joint elected officials meeting in this fall. That was rescheduled to January. So depending on the fate of that in January, that project could then move forward. We do have an RFP ready for the pipeline project that's ready to go if that's successful. And we have some video lottery funds earmarked to be able to complete that design phase to get us to a shovel-ready project. And so that's where we're at now.
So it seems then, knowing all of that, sounds like the transfer station is pretty well separated from the whole single stream facility. And even the discharge point really may or may not be an issue.
Mm-hmm. That'd be our hope.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of, the preferred option of a new location is, one of my concerns though is how do we keep Glenwood operating while we're rebuilding it safely?
Mm-hmm.
How many times are we going to have to shut it down temporarily when you can't do that and keep people away? So being able to build while we're still operating that, I think has a separate site has a huge logistical advantage in a lot of ways. So I do like the preferred option one. And it also gives us the ability. Glenwood may be trash university today, but because of its location with river frontage, that's basically envisioned to redevelop, and is one of our last riverfront commercial locations in the Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County area. It has the potential to become a huge draw for activity where trash university doesn't fit. It's not the highest and best use of that land in that area. So moving it away from Glenwood and starting trash university, moving away from Glenwood might actually be a good thing in the long run, as people have envisioned, the Glenwood master plan that Springfield and the county has co-adopted, and the money we've invested and lobbied for to redo Franklin Boulevard, both federal and state dollars, is all around that whole redevelopment project. So I think the options you've got up on the board, I can support them in that order.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Buck, followed by Commissioner Bernie.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions. The first is about the price tag, $30 to $50 million. Do we have that money? Have we been saving for this event? I mean, it sounds like we're at the end of our useful life of the current location of the transfer facility. I know we're talking about a potential purchase of a new location. What money do we have for that? What money do we have for pre-development costs to even explore this? Because the timeline that you've given of what I think is a minimum of 4 years, but probably could go to up to 15 or something, depending on if we don't have identified funding. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we've been tucking a very minimal amount into a Glenwood rebuild and reserves. I would say that we could realistically purchase property and start design process, and we would feel okay with that. We don't have $30 million to build it, so we would need to determine how we do that. There's some, you could do that through a fee, increase. We could, look at some other, kind of loan options to pay back over time, but we don't have that total sum saved up in our reserves.
There's no state federal funding for this kind of thing. Not identified, at least at this point. So I don't have an issue with the priorities that you put forth, except for the location will be highly contentious, I believe. Like, we had a whole room full of people here today, and we moved the landfill, or the transfer station, excuse me. I would suspect, depending on where we think about putting it, we could fill this room a couple more times over it. That I agree that current location is valuable land. It's very valuable land. So if we move to something else, of course, I'd want to really thoroughly discuss what we do with that land. But I think if we're going to move it, it has to be somewhere in that very corridor. Because if we move it too far to the west or too far to the east, then people on the opposite side will just not use it as much. Too far north or south, the same thing's going to happen. So if we give direction to go out and buy some property and not have some kind of public process of location in advance of that, I think we'll get some negative feedback. So what kind of process were you thinking in that regard?
Yeah, we haven't, I mean, there are really 3 areas that we have been able to locate that would have available land that have similar use, if you would. They're not in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And, you know, that's Goshen, and it's out West Eugene, and then it's, you know, right, like International Paper area over in Springfield was another. There were a couple properties out there. So I think that we could potentially go and do a public process even with identified areas and get some feedback. You know, one of the things we know about Glenwood is everybody loves it because it's so central, but everybody drives to it, right? Because our user base, our 1,000 people that are coming on Saturday don't live within a mile of Glenwood, you know, so they're coming, it's just everybody's kind of coming, you know, a similar distance. So we anticipate that if we went West Eugene, yeah, there's a portion that would be like, great. And there's a portion that wouldn't be. So we haven't gotten deep into what the public process would be, but we agree that, you know, we would probably want to start with maybe surveying the folks that use the facility, because and our account holders. So a lot of the folks that we would be concerned about disrupting would be your business owners, your small construction business owners that use it, you know, 2-3 times a week, and how it would impact them, as opposed to, I mean, I work there and I only bring a load there 3 times a year, you know, so I'll complain if you make me drive a lot farther, but the impact won't be as great. So we'd probably start with our users and focus on regular users, and then maybe we could share that out in a public way and, you know, see if we got a lot of feedback on that. But.
Appreciate that. I think the location is probably the biggest issue here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Commissioner Burney, followed by Vice Chair Trieger.
It sounds like a conundrum. So honestly, the happiest I am from this conversation is to hear that we're actually going to make progress on a leachate pipeline to get those trucks off the road. Truly, I remember a couple, 3 years ago, we discussed that and approved a contract to do the engineering for that. So now you're past that, you're ready to go. Won't be here when it happens, but it's going to happen. Who the hell cares? As long as it's going to happen. As it relates to, I'm curious, why is the preferred option to move as opposed to stay?
It is, well, there's 2 things I think Commissioner Bozovich did bring up. One, which is, not only is it difficult to stay open, we can do it. We did it when we put scales in, and that was actually, it was real tight to have people right next to where you were doing that. It is difficult to construct while you're open, and it does hamstring us a bit on, it's not a blank slate. If you're staying open, you're working around, you know, what is currently there. So it's a little difficult there. But other than that, we don't feel it's realistic that anyone can commit that, okay, you're good for 30 years in that spot. So we just feel like we're going to spend all this money on a facility, and then in 10 years, the pressure is going to be there again.
No, it makes sense. I mean,
yeah. Otherwise,
that's my first option too.
Yeah.
I just wanted to understand.
Mm-hmm.
For 18 years, you've been just patching things together?
Longer. That's how long I've been there.
My goodness. I think what Commissioner Buck said is absolutely true. I think your timeline is way off. Seeing as how you even prefaced, Jeff, if I'm correct, saying if someone gave me $60 million right now, that's the time frame, which was the 4-year time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So really, pragmatically, if this body said that's your first option, go forth, we're for it. We don't know the time frame, right? is all you can do now is just take some initial baby steps. It might be 8 years, but nonetheless, it gives you a direction. And that's what I think in your introductory remarks, you said you were looking for.
Correct.
So, okay, so that's good. I also encourage, it's interesting. I believe the city of Springfield sees that property as prime development property. Some in the city see it as a great spot for an indoor track. I think you might want to talk to them, because I think in the back of their minds, they're thinking that the land would be a contribution. I don't know if that fits into, right, the plan. That's pretty valuable land. Do you happen to know whether, I don't expect you to know this, I'm gonna investigate whether that land's in an opportunity zone or not, part of the Glenwood Opportunity Zone, because that's even more fuel for their fire to make it, move it from, what did you call it? From garbage university to something far more valuable. So based on that, I would go along with the staff recommendation, knowing that we don't know what it's going to take, but at least it gives you the direction you're requesting. Thank you, Chair.
From garbage university to track down planet, I think is the term that was used.
Or to a convention center. Who knows?
Vice Chair Trigger.
Thank you. One just clarifying question in the board packet, you talk about under your recommendation is it gives the ability to add diversion options as legislation comes into effect. Is that the product stewardship bill and the impacts that will have? Is that the legislation you're referring to?
Yeah, it's the mattress that'll be not this January, next, and then the big packaging that'll come down in 2024, 5. Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I was.
Yep.
Explicitly, and really, what I was going to ask has been addressed. The only thing that hasn't quite is the revenue source to do the construction. But if we have any idea of the value of the land, there's potentially a source of revenue after we've moved it, right? The order of it's a little out of order, but that is an asset, right? That so I don't know if we know anything about the value of that land. The only thing I would say, I'm fine with these options, but I also don't want to hamstring you if in the course of looking for a new location, the folks you're working with were to discover potentially two smaller.
Right.
I don't want to say don't do that. If we're looking for land, we're looking for land and we don't know what's out there yet. And so my preference would be to give the direction to say, go with preferred option 1, but don't close you off as you're looking at available land to that third option in case that ends up being what's the best.
Okay. And I do think Commissioner Buck's point is good. We may learn through the public process that we're not going to get away. 2 locations is just what's going to work for our community. And we'd want to remain open to that.
I mean, thinking about long range and access to 2 sites in 2 different areas does increase and improve access for the end users. It does make it more expensive to operate and get that 2 sets of stepping and so on. But I just didn't want to close us off from that.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Nothing else to say for me other than what I always say about the pipeline, and that is back in, I think it was 1996, it was considered, and I was on the Eugene City Council when the Eugene City Council said that ain't gonna happen. If it had happened then, we wouldn't be talking about it today. So, but we continue to talk about it, and I agree with Commissioner Burney that, that really has to be a hot button for us, because I think about those 27 truckloads, and I understand they're stable trucks, they're not gonna turn over, right? But what if one does, and so that really is a big issue, and not to mention the amount of diesel that's being used trucking that stuff up and down the freeway. But I believe that you've heard from the board that we like your preference hierarchy, with the exception that, as Commissioner Trigger said, don't leave the 2 sites off the table if something does jump out in front of you. So I think we're safe in saying good set of options, good presentation, and that's what we're with.
Okay.
I don't think we need a order on that. We don't need a motion on that. Just that set of instructions gives you said that does set the wheels moving, if more like a worm gear than a wheel.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it helps us to know that it's worth spending some time and money on surveying all the folks that use that and getting that information, because we know the direction that we're moving in. That's very helpful.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the presentation today. And thank you for being here to listen to it. And you know, I think Commissioner Bernie and I kind of fast tracked this conversation, but it's good to have it up front and good to get that worm turning. All right, then let's move.
Have you ever seen Total Recall? They would have these worms.
All right, then we'll move down our agenda. We have to item 16, Commissioner Business. Any announcements? Commissioner Bernie.
Yeah, I just want to share, it was such a pleasure to announce scholarships that I had the good fortune of endowing to three, it turned out 3 young Latinx women, but the scholarships were for young people who have completely turned their lives around from the conditions that they were born into and met to really trying to further their education and have an impact on their community. So I just want to share with this body that it was such a pleasure to provide scholarships to Samantha Cantar Flores, Janet Marisol Duran, and Anahi Sandoval. And all of them are from Springfield, and all of them are pursuing both further education and committing to stay in the community and try and help others in the Springfield Latinx community. So that was a thrill for me. And I just want to share that I'll be speaking with a group of financiers, including people from Bank of the West and First Interstate at the Go Clean Energy Conference in Bend this next week. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernie. Any further announcements? We're a bit silent on announcements today, Ms. Malgrysky. So do we have any future board assignment requests? Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. The first one is regarding that letter that I handed out this morning and sent to Diana so she can attach it to material for today. This is regarding the Pleasant Hill and Goshen Fire and Rescue Facility. So I'm not sure if anybody had a chance to read it, but this is really to give more than 15 minutes of our staff time to help assist them in a possible way to reorganize their district. And I say that instead of the word merger because there are some technicalities with the merger, the way that it's currently written, that they have challenges with doing that. So they may need our assistance as a board in order to help facilitate perhaps dissolution and new district. And I want to make sure that it is approved by the board, that we give them more than 15 minutes of our staff time to see if the board itself can assist.
Thank you. I trust that that more than 15 minutes would help answer some of the questions that are outlined in this letter. Perfect. Agreement on that? Yep. Yeah. Universal.
I have one other item, which is regarding Blue River and wildfire recovery, and hopefully put on a future agenda because we're not entirely certain it may exceed the administrator's funding authority. So we did get Blue River wastewater infrastructure investment from the last legislative session. But in order to proceed with that particular project, they have to put in a new drain field. And that drain field that is they're eyeing up there is outside their boundary. And we will need a potential land use action as the board in the future to help facilitate a boundary process to incorporate the drain field so they can actually have a wastewater system. So I'm hoping to get your support for our administrator work with Matt McRae and on the topic and bring it back for us for consideration. We know that boundary changes are one of the hardest things to do in land use. But we have a timeline in order to expend those funds that we received from the legislature because they are ARPA funds. And so we need to get this going right away.
Okay. Looking for a head nod on that? We're a go across the board, universal. Thank you. Any further agenda team requests? I should ask, you're clear on both of those two.
The second one I didn't quite get, sorry. Blue River Fire Recovery.
Wastewater drain field boundary change that will probably need to come back to the board to help facilitate. So we got, 15.5 million from the legislative session in order to help facilitate that wastewater system. Won't occur if they don't have a drain field.
So you'll direct
it's moving forward a work session with the board.
So yeah, he wants to bring back the topic of land use action for boundary change to us as a board for consideration.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I have two items. One is I appreciate you getting the clarification that the TLT doesn't apply to certain kinds of medical homes and so on. But we also heard some testimony this morning of concern about impact to nonprofits who are using hotels and a voucher program for sheltering for unhoused folks. But we also, we've seen it in wildfire response. We know our domestic violence providers rely on hotel vouchers. So really just asking for the administrator to take some time with staff and whatever community partners as needed, just bring back to us a report on the impact that this increase might have, this increase on TLT on service providers for these special use vouchers, and whether there's anything we can do to mitigate the impact or just understand what that impact is. So that's the first one.
Okay, we're good.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Can I just provide a clarification? There was an update to, because I thought the language I read included the concerns that you had, and the ordinance or the code was updated, and it's, I guess there's a section F. I'm just reading my emails here, but it says any occupant whose rent is paid by a local agency, either directly or through a voucher in response to a local disaster declared emergency.
Does that include domestic violence victims?
Well, the code, sorry, I'm just going to go to, because I read through that and I thought that it did.
That was something that emergency.
Talked about dwelling. It talked about mental health, dwelling facility providing drug or alcohol abuse, or providing mental health treatment, dwelling that is used by members of the general public for temporary human occupancy for fewer than 30 days. Government agency directly or through a voucher, and the purpose of which to provide emergency or temporary shelter, nonprofit youth or church camp, nonprofit conference center, other nonprofit facility. So if it's a nonprofit facility, and then that new language I just read. So we can get some clarification on if that's included, or it may just be that potentially could be a code update that we could make and then notify DOR of that change.
Great. Thank you.
But so is that still an assignment? Do you just want?
Is that a report back?
It's a report back.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then the other, Chair Farr mentioned that he and I were at this roundtable with legislators and community partners and provider leaders around the Behavioral Health Stabilization Center. And so I'm just asking if colleagues would like a project update to come back before us before the end of the calendar year on the Behavioral Health Stabilization Center.
All right.
The presentation yesterday was great. It gave a lot of information. I don't think a lot of work would go into that. The time to get it on the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the purpose of yesterday was to sort of prime the pump a bit for the legislative session, as well as more sort of brass tacks operational. Where are we in the timeline of the project? And so maybe some hybrid of those two things. Great, thank you.
And it's joined at the hip with our discussion regarding aid and assist and other things that are going to be surfacing during the legislative session. But it's pretty timely to get it done before the end of the year. Long before, if possible. So.
Particularly in the judge's decision that's requiring them to discharge.
Yeah. Okay. And any further? Yes, Commissioner Burney.
Diana, are you there? Well,
yes, I am.
Okay. You forgot to tell me to do this. Chair. Oh. She knows.
This you remember. Thank you.
This body was kind enough to support a future agenda item or a work session that I had proposed. The intent was good. The intent had to do with seeing if there were ways that we could relieve somehow seniors that were under a certain income threshold from increases in property taxes. But I've learned through staff's patience and understanding that that's literally impossible. And the staff hours it would eat up to provide that analysis to the board simply wouldn't be worth it. So I wanted to withdraw publicly that request with the board's permission.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. I have none. So, yes, get back to my agenda. Then
that was just a removal.
Yes.
Of that.
Yes. I was told by a certain someone I had to do that publicly and with board consent.
What was the assignment related to? I'm sorry.
It related to looking at whether seniors could be relieved of property tax increases.
Then, Ms. Mokrowski, we don't have another place for you to do announcements. I think you've already covered that in this morning's meeting. Then let's go on with a review of assignments.
So I had two from Commissioner Buck, the just responding to and providing assistance necessary for the Pleasant Hill and Goshen Fire and Rescue District reorganization discussion. And then the Blue River Fire Recovery wastewater boundary change, an item to come back to the board. Potential action, Commissioner Trieger had two requests. One, a report back on the Lane Code Chapter 4 regarding TLT exemptions for nonprofits. Who's affected, who isn't. And then the second one regarding Behavioral Health Stabilization Center update before the end of the year. And then Commissioner Burney's request to remove the property tax leaf discussion related to seniors.
That really, with that, really good.
County Administrator Mokrowski, if I can interrupt for 1 second, I think we can remove one of those assignments or call it a close one. I did get a notice today asking to bring the Stabilization Center agenda item onto the agenda for next board meeting on October 11th.
Oh,
okay. Good. So we already have it scheduled. Great.
Better and better.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay, that covers the review of assignments. Then we're moving toward adjournment, but we will be reconvening in executive session at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. So in a moment, I'll be reading this into executive session. It will be a hybrid meeting at 9 a.m. in the Board of Commissioners conference room. So the sound of my gavel will be recessing the Board of County Commissioners and reconvening, recessing the Board of County Commissioners and reconvening as in executive session in the Board of Commissioners conference room tomorrow morning. The Board of County Commissioners will meet in executive session to consider the employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602A, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. We reserve the right to come back out into public session should the need arise.